Okay, Ole Miss heading to the swamp to take on a resurgent Florida Gator team. Ole Miss about a 10.5 point favorite right now. Total somewhere in the mid 50s. This game's 12 o'clock Eastern time on ABC. It's the biggest game in this series since 2008. That was when Ole Miss beat the fourth-ranked Florida Gators. Tim Tebow delivered the promise speech. I mean, we've all heard it. We've all seen it, right? You've seen it. You know what I'm talking about. They haven't played in 9 years. It's been a while. So kind of nice to see where things are going right here. And I think Ole Miss can certainly lock up a playoff spot with a victory in each of the next 2 weeks. But if you look at Mississippi State, this is the toughest hurdle remaining. They win this week. They're in the playoff. They're in a really good spot. But standing in their way is a Gators team that is fresh off their first-ranked win in a minute. And they were able to play pretty good when DJ Lagway's been in the game. In each of his 4 starts this year, they're 3-1, but the one loss was against Georgia, and that was when Lagway actually had to leave the game there midway through it. So this is a good Florida team that you do not want to take lightly. Let's look at question number 1. Who is better at creating or defending the big plays? This game's really going to be defined by big plays. Both teams make it a huge priority within their offense. Both teams emphasize it with how many shots downfield that they take, and both teams excel when taking those shots downfield. So Ole Miss, they've created 120 explosive plays this year. And like you guys know, if you've heard this show before, we define explosive plays as 10-plus yard runs, 20-plus yard passes. So explosive plays, 10-plus runs, 20-plus passes, that is tied for the most in the FBS with Miami and UCF. So Ole Miss does it as well, if not better than anybody this year. Florida, conversely, in defending those big plays, they've allowed 93 explosive plays. That's the second most in the SEC. The only team with more is Mississippi State, and Mississippi State's a 2-win football team. So you look at the 20-plus yard plays, Gators have allowed 58 of those. That's 8 both in the FBS. So it's been significant. And these two quarterbacks also, when you look at it, both Jackson Dart and DJ Lagway, they throw it downfield with great regularity now. I mean, Jackson Dart averages over 11 air yards an attempt. That's the second most in the SEC, behind DJ Lagway, who's right around 12 air yards per attempt. So these two guys, they love to throw it downfield. They take chances, and it's crazy when you think about with Lagway too. Like, Dart is a more complete player, is a more polished player at this point of his development. He can beat you at the line of scrimmage, intermediate, underneath, downfield, what have you. If you look at DJ Lagway, he actually gets more accurate the further the ball travels downfield. Like, statistically speaking, and QBR and all these other ratings and things like that, when you just watch him too, it's like the pinpoint accuracy on throws at or behind the line of scrimmage isn't even as good as the throws 40 yards downfield, which is crazy, but pretty cool. And it's neat to see how much confidence he has in his arm. Question number 2, can Florida's pass rush continue to wreak havoc? Now, Florida got after LSU big time last week. I mean, that was a big part of why Florida pulled off the upset. They had a season-high 7 sacks. They had 21 pressures. Now, you take a look at the numbers, they had also had to defend 92 plays. So maybe sack rate, maybe pressure rate isn't outrageous, but still, those are massive numbers when taking into account that LSU going into last week's game had given up just 6 sacks this year. They doubled up their entire season in one night. Pretty impressive. So they clearly found something. And Ole Miss, they're allowing 28% pressure on dropbacks this year. They've quietly gotten much, much better with their pass protection, but they also protect their offensive line with some of the quick throws. And the quarterback run threat also helps their offensive line, and they'll probably have to utilize some of that in this game. Question number 3. I think Florida's going to have to be great in the red zone here. So can Florida hold Ole Miss to field goals in the red zone as opposed to touchdowns? Because I think if this thing becomes a track meet and it becomes about who has the ball last and which quarterback you trust and who's got better weapons and all this other stuff, I lean Ole Miss, right? I think you probably would too. But in situational football, 3rd downs, 4th downs, red zone, if Florida can win situationally, they got a real chance of pulling off the upset as a double-digit dog. Now, Ole Miss, if there's one Achilles heel to what they do offensively, is that they're not great in the red zone. Their red zone efficiency is 60%. That is 77th in the FBS and 5th lowest in the SEC. So if they can just force Ole Miss to settle for field goals, or if they can just force Ole Miss to roll the dice on 4th down, maybe Florida will have a chance to keep this thing much more competitive. Question number 4, how much does Trey Harris's return affect Ole Miss? Does it affect them for the better, or does it just kind of keep them the same? Look, Lane Kiffin saying he's back is massive. He hasn't played since he got injured against LSU. He's likely back. He's still leading the FBS in yards receiving per game at 141 yards a game. He's 5th in raw receiving yards right now, and he's only played 7 games. So it just goes to show you just how impactful and how good this young man is. The one thing that's interesting, though, is I feel like, at least when he was in the lineup earlier in the year, Jackson Dart would sometimes get a little bit fixated on where Trey Harris was. And with him out of the lineup, he was able to distribute the ball to a bunch of other playmakers. Well, let's not disrupt the rhythm that Ole Miss is playing with just because Trey's back and you want to feed the beast. No, if he's open, throw it. If he's not, still distribute it to everybody else, just like you have the last couple weeks with great success. So it'll be very interesting to see if that disrupts the rhythm just a little bit, because they want to get Trey back involved in what they're doing offensively. Trends in the game. Ole Miss 8-2-1 against the spread as a road favorite since 2021. That's among the best in the FBS. Ole Miss, the under is 6-1 since 2021 when they've had 10 plus days off. They're coming off a bye week in this situation, so the under looking like it's a good trend. And then Florida, they've covered in 3 straight as a home underdog. That's the longest active streak among Power 4 teams this season. I will not be picking the game, but I will be on call alongside Bob Wischusen and Molly McGrath, and we look forward to seeing you on ABC at noon Eastern time.